So, in this update, they've added 2 new consumables. Interestingly, these consumables are considered to be event consumables because they can only be gotten from the Surf and Turf Battle Pass. You can only get 15 sandcastles and 12 heat waves. Now, it might be the case where you may be able to get the sandcastle and the heat waves through triumphs in like Fallen mode. And for example, this person here has said that they got the sandcastle barricade from beating Fallen mode. So it's actually likely that the developers have added these rewards into the game mode triumphs. So it looks like you are able to at least get it through Fallen mode. Not so sure about hardcore mode, but certainly in Fallen mode you are able to get the sandcastle barricade, which is just called the sandcastle in the consumable menu. And it does look like you're able to get the heatwave consumable in regular game mode triumphs, but other than that, the game isn't too clear on how else you get these consumables, because it's not through crates. You do not get these consumables through crates. So if I were to see the odds of getting the items through a high grade crate, not here. Low grade crate, not here. Mid grade crate, not here. And the only guarantee of getting these consumables is through the Battle Pass. And I think a lot of them are actually locked away from the Premium Battle Pass. Certainly for the Heat Wave. There's 3 Heat Waves here. Another 3 here. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So, at least, I mean, all of the sandcastles that I can see here, you get them through the regular Battle Pass. So 15 sandcastles up for grabs in the regular Battle Pass. However, half of the Heatwave consumables are locked on the premium side of things. So on the regular side, if you don't buy the premium Battle Pass, you are only looking at 6 Heatwaves. Now, the description of the sandcastle barricade, and it's just called sandcastle here, it's place a temporary barricade with 300 health and gradually spawns crab units out of it. And the heat wave, it's a map-wide heat wave that burns and deals damage over time to all enemies for a short duration. The heat wave is an epic consumable, whereas the sandcastle is an uncommon consumable. That has nothing to do with the rarities here. They are similar-ish in names, apart from there's no epic rarity here. But it's not likely that the sandcastle barricade is part of the uncommon here. It might be. I think the Easter egg, when it was part of the Fallen mode reward, if it ever was. So, for example, the fruit cake, that was part of the common rewards. But I don't see the Easter egg here. Certainly, when it comes to the pumpkin bomb, which is also a epic rarity, you actually got the greatest odds when you played easy mode, because I believe there was like a 5% chance of getting the pumpkin bomb. Yeah, as seen here, 1 to 2 pumpkin bombs, uncommon. So, because there are 4 items here, uncommon, yeah, you're looking at about a 6-ish% chance of getting the pumpkin bomb. So it might not be the case where the heat wave and the sandcastles are as common as the pumpkin bomb was in easy mode, but I mean, we don't know the rarities of them right now. And other than the Battle Pass, it looks like that's the only way of getting the sandcastle barricade and the heat wave consumables. Now, as for the consumables themselves, you can't really equip them here unless you equip them through the lobby, so you have to automatically equip them through the lobby. So because the consumables are, I assume, going to be quite rare after this Battle Pass ends, I'm not going to use them in regular gameplay. I'm just going to use them here. I mean, it's the same for the Easter eggs and the pumpkin bombs, for example. Like, remember the pumpkin bombs, right? When everyone started to use them to get the Frost Spawner logbook. Can you ask how many people have the pumpkin bombs now? I think people, like, barely have any, if any at all. And like, it's the same for the Easter egg, it's the same for the Ducky Squad. I'd imagine not that many people have like too much. I doubt those people have like 100 or so of those consumables, especially when you compare it to like even the nuke, for example. I think more people have the nuke than the pumpkin bomb nowadays. Anyways, in terms of the consumables, the sandcastle barricade, which isn't called the sandcastle barricade, it's just called the sandcastle, it's like a barricade, and you place it down, it has 300 health. And as you can see, the sandcastle barricades, they actually spawn in crabs. And they spawn in crabs, even though it says at a gradual rate, it does spawn in crabs at quite a fast rate actually. 15 crabs, a crab every 2 seconds I suppose, and they each have 15 health. And as you can see, unusually, the barricade is actually decreasing its health every time it spawns in a crab. So the barricade itself is like a barricade, but I think you get more use out of it when you are spawning in units. Then again though, the units, the crab units here, they're decreasing at the same rate that the sandcastle health is decreasing by, so it's not like you're getting much use out of the barricade as a barricade itself. But it does solve an issue with the regular barricade. When you placed it down, it might not be damaged fully, and so when an enemy trips over it with like more health than the barricade, it wasn't dealt that damage. So, for example, the Fallen King, right? If it steps over a barricade with 150 health, full health, it doesn't get damaged by 150. However, when it comes to these units, if a Fallen King were to step over the crabs, yes, they would be damaged by 15 health. Now, apparently, there was an issue where the Sandcastle barricade actually spawned in an infinite amount of crabs, or crabs over a longer period of time, as you can see here. However, I'm not exactly seeing this. I don't know if the developers have fixed this. Certainly, it doesn't look like it's a bug that you can abuse anymore, because the Sandcastle barricade does decrease in health. Maybe it was the case where previously the Sandcastle barricade didn't actually decrease in health. But certainly nowadays, you can't really abuse it for like infinite damage. And the Sandcastle barricade will only deal 300 damage, whether it be through the crab units, which can be instantly killed by a boss, making it useless, or if an enemy runs over the barricade. Yeah, see, that's the one disadvantage of using units compared to using the barricade. It's if a boss ability literally destroys all the units, then yeah, you've basically wasted all of the barricade's health. And also, I can't lie, barricades, they're quite useless. I've alluded to this in the past, right? But barricades, they can only deal damage to enemies with lower health than it. So, for example, if I were to place a barricade here, right on top of the Void Reaver, it won't deal 300 damage to it. As you can see, it stepped over the barricade, and yet it's not dealing. It didn't deal 300 damage to it. It dealt like 60 damage to it, but that's because of the crabs that spawn in from it. Though, interestingly, even though the Sandcastle barricade is broken, the crabs still spawn in from it, and they still damage the Void Reaver, which is very interesting. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's forever, because the crabs still continue to spawn in, as you can see there, and it doesn't appear to be affected by timescale. As you can see, the crabs were still spawning in, and the crabs continue to spawn in even at a 10 timescale. So perhaps this is the glitch that everyone's talking about, right? If you damage the barricade, does it continuously spawn in crabs forever? Perhaps it does. Although, yeah, it still continues to spawn in crabs. I'll come back in like a minute or so and see if it still spawns in crabs. Right, so as you can see here, I've deployed a lot of Sandcastle barricades, and eventually these will deplete to 0 health, which means that the Sandcastle barricade which I placed here, which was destroyed by the Void Reaver, should eventually just disappear, and it shouldn't spawn in any more crabs. However, I don't think that's the case, so let's see. These barricades, they have been destroyed, and yet the barricade that was here, that was destroyed by the Void Reaver, it still continues to spawn in crabs, and this barricade here also continues spawning crabs. So it looks very likely that there is an issue where if the barricade is destroyed by an enemy collision, it will continue spawning crabs forever. So actually, you want the barricade to be destroyed so it can spawn in crabs forever. Now, I must say, it's not really an efficient way of like damaging enemies, because, well, 15 crabs, a 15 health crab spawning in like every 2 seconds or so, that's not affected by timescale. Doesn't seem that great, I can't lie. However, 15 damage is 15 damage. You are looking at, what, a 7.5 DPS increase to what you have right now? Early on, that could make a difference. So, yeah, an infinite damage bug, I guess. Although, like, the consumable probably does have, like, a limit on how much you can use it. The next consumable is the Heatwave consumable. And I think it's very similar to the Nuke consumable in that it is universal. It is across the entire map. Because it looks like you select it, but then there's nothing about you that shows that you're holding like some sort of meteorological events that causes a heat wave. So you place it down here and it just creates like tumbleweed everywhere. So if we were to spawn in a load of eggs and then we just use the heat wave, yes, so they do get damaged by it. And it doesn't matter where you place down the heat wave, they'll be damaged by it anywhere. So it's a bit like the nuke and its fallout damage. Oh god, I didn't mean to do... Oh dear, I didn't mean to do that. In the meanwhile, it looks like I've stopped the crab spawning in. That's very cool. Right, let's see how much damage this Heatwave consumable does. So it does deal burn damage, as you can see here. So I imagine if an enemy has burn immunity, it won't deal damage to them. But it looks like it deals 1000 damage to all enemies. So certainly the Heatwave could be used as a weapon against the entire map full of enemies if they have 1000 health or lower. And considering the fact that some game modes can be a bit spammy, looking at Pizza Party, and not necessarily all of the enemies there have a high amount of health, it could be quite useful against those enemies. So it's like a sort of mini nuke, except the nuke deals far more damage than this, and the nuke also has like fallout damage. So if an enemy were to spawn in later, then they would also be damaged. Except that doesn't really apply to boss enemies. You can only really damage it. And the thing with the nuke is that it is based on the distance away from where you place the nuke. So for example, if I were to place down a nuke here, then the Void Reavers here would be damaged less than these Void Reavers here. But for the Heatwave, it doesn't matter. It's all universal. Yeah, so I may have spammed the Heatwave consumable quite a lot. And eventually, it burned my PC. Yeah, no, my PC sped up because it was too hot. And I was burning a lot of Void Reavers quite badly. So it does look like the Heatwave burn stuff, status effect, it looks like it can stack. And I can't lie, I might have just accidentally found the next disconnection glitch in Tower Defense Simulator. Because if my PC could not handle the amount of Void Reavers that were being burnt by the Heatwave consumable, then I doubt a lot of other PCs could, given the fact that my PC, I mean, to be fair, it's like 5 years old and top of the range back then. Nowadays, not so much. But given the fact that most people are playing like mobile, for example, using the Heatwave consumable on over 100 enemies, 100 boss enemies, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. It feels like a lot of people could get disconnected through glitches. Now, luckily, it doesn't look like you can use the Heatwave consumable all that much. You can't really spam it outside of admin mode. So here, it looks like there's 3 uses of the Heatwave consumable and 4 uses of the sandcastle. And yes, I've been glitched out into the water because of my charm. Very, very cool. And it looks like they have an initial cooldown of 45 seconds and 30 seconds respectively. And it looks like those are the cooldowns overall for the consumables. So it doesn't look like you can spam it right off the bat, which is especially bad for the sandcastle barricade consumable, given the fact that it is quite powerful at the very start, and if you damage it and kill it immediately, especially before all of the crabs spawn in. So probably you just need like a normal boss to run over it. But those are the 2 new consumables in Tower Defense Simulator. Very cool and very buggy, especially because one of them has just killed off my PC.